Hey, stalwart, uh, stalwart students. Anna has already anticipated putting up the prayers. So let's go with that. Let's start um, with mindfulness of the meaning of this taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, which is going to try to, if we do authentically, create the inertia, the force that will propel through the listening to the course today, with a virtuous motivation. Sangye churang soki chognam la changchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki dola penche sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, through the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings. Sangye churang soki chognam la jangchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki dola penche sangye drupa sho. It would be nice if there was some abbreviated way to say in Tibetan, like where it says, right now it says chunyen, listening to the Dharma. If there was an easy way to say listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma, because that's hopefully what we will do during the class. And then short mandala offering. By offering this ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, and adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, as well as the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, our primordial Dharmakaya Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. That means in accordance with participants today, in our class today, what we really need. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. So good to see you. Hi, Mikhail and Richard have shown up. David is there, and Don is also here. Louise, hi guys. Good to see you all. As is our tradition, we'll begin with a little meditation. So sit comfortably. If you can get your doggy on your lap, well situated there, Richard. Or is that a cat? That's a dog, right? Dog. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See if he can meditate or she can meditate also. Relax your body and relax your mind, which itself is an art, as I've mentioned before. Remind yourself you don't have to multitask. In fact, you are now prohibited from multitasking other mental chores, memories, plans, even other observations about the present, other than just first recognizing the respiration. And then once it's recognized, which is very simple, holding it in mindfulness, holding it with mindfulness, as though you were carrying, being mindful in the sense of carrying a bowl of hot sesame oil filled to the brim that the king has sent you to delivered to his queen with the threat that if you drop even one drop of sesame oil, you will be beheaded. So you have to be very mindful. So what you're mindful of is the inhalation, the change of direction to the exhalation, whereupon again there's that pause before you inhale again, recognizing whether they're short or long. And if you've been a little bit successful, you can continue doing that if you haven't been successful. If you have been successful in calming your mind, bring your attention to more subtle, much more subtle object of the mental consciousness. Breathing easy to find and then to keep in mind. Observation of the consciousness, because it is clear by nature, difficult to apprehend. So we make, at the beginning, we make our first attempt by recognizing the contents and then letting go of the contents, letting go of our following the individual thoughts and images to recognize the substratum of the mind, the conventional clear light nature of the mind within which those thoughts are appearing, within which they withdraw, they disappear back into it, absorb back into it, and they emerge from it. New thoughts emerge from it. Vast like space without any color or shape, an object of our wisdom and gnosis eyes, not an object of the ordinary eye, doesn't have a shape or color. Maybe some people would say you have an intuition of it, but you're developing a mental image of the clear light nature of the mind. And its import in that it is also referred to as the conventional Buddha nature or the developmental Buddha nature, Buddha potential. The fact that we see the mind offers no resistance to the arisal or reabsorption of thoughts, material into the mind, and emotions, so forth. They are all transitory, means that we can get rid of all of our faults. And at dark times, maybe some people experienced some dark times recently after the election. We can concentrate on this, remind ourselves that all of our worries and fears and emotions, maybe frustration, anger, whatever, are transitory. Let them absorb back into the mind because they are ultimately empty of existing the way that they appear. That the situation itself, any moment of our life, is empty of existing the way that it appears. When we do our succession yoga, those of you who've received highest tantra yoga empowerments through the succession yogas daily, when we visualize Vajradhara in front, trying to imagine what the mind of an omniscient being would be. All of the things that appear to us as either attractive or repulsive, fearful, anger-provoking, all of them do not appear to the aspect of the omniscient mind apprehending the ultimate, to the face of that mind apprehending the ultimate. within that understanding, when they do appear, they're linked with an understanding that those appearances are dependent arisings, having depended on our own individual karma and our group karma that we share with other beings. Knowing that, seeing all of the sentient beings are exactly the same as ourself and wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy, but immersed in cyclic existence without a way of escaping. The Buddha proposed that to use this auspicious moment that we have at present that allows us to see that and think about the import of the conventional clear light nature of the mind. Use this auspicious moment of leisure and endowment to achieve the two great goals of liberation or enlightenment. And having the fortune to have heard the Buddha's teachings, his admonition not to be satisfied with his lesser vehicle teachings alone, not to strive for liberation for oneself alone, but to strive to develop the Mahayana path, the entryway of which is the development of bodhicitta, a mind so holy, so sacred, so powerful that it can purify the greatest negative imprints in our mind and can, along with an understanding of emptiness, create so much virtuous karma, as well as rivaling the karma that we can create through practicing guru devotion, the two great sources of virtuous karma. To think what that means, bodhicitta means to take cognizance of all living beings with a soft, loving mind, sees them as attractive, as endearing, and recognizing their suffering, having practiced already the intermediate scope of the stages of the path, recognizing the suffering nature of cyclic existence, that there's nowhere within cyclic existence, no feats, no states of power or wealth or, total enjoyment. None of them are lasting. All of them are of the nature of suffering. To think sentient beings, all sentient beings are exactly like that. Those who are reveling now in their recently won glories, victories, they are suffering even at that moment because they're experiencing not only changeable suffering, but all pervasive, compounded suffering. All sentient beings have been our mother, depthlessly kind. Even as strangers or enemies, they've benefited us. So to think to achieve enlightenment for their sake, that is to say, in order to extricate them from cyclic existence, it's not enough that we know worldly advice now. how to cope with the worldly appearances. But to extricate them from samsara and to lead them to enlightenment, we have to have achieved perfectly that state ourself. So think, I'm going to participate in the class, listening to the Dharma, contemplating the meaning, and when those moments of clarity arise in some understanding, to hold that single-pointedly, to develop successfully the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and wisdom. Backed by the motivation at the beginning to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, which are the causes of the Buddha's two bodies of form and truth, the Rupakaya and Dharmakaya. I think I'm going to participate in order to achieve enlightenment through accumulating the two collections for the welfare, the benefit of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back. So Amy's here. Mintu, my MIT buddy, is somewhere there. And Nawan Judse. Hi, Nawan. Where are you?
Hi there. I'm in North Carolina, aligned with Kadampa Center. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, so you're near Raleigh.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So David and Karen are your
They're
neighbors.
buddies.
Yeah. Hi, Mikhail. Hi, David. It looks like your cataract surgery is settling down.
I hope so.
I hope so. Okay. So before we begin class, I wanted to ask Doris if she would put in the chat the PDF that I'd sent her. Let's see, is it up there already? Yeah, Vajrasattva mantra. So if you have a chance of looking at that on your screen, what I'd like to do is to remind you that, as we were talking about in the motivation, in order to accumulate merit and wisdom, one of the obstacles is our store of negative karma, our storehouse, our treasury of negative karma, which act as obstacles to realizations. If you can purify those negative actions that are still, the residue of which are still on our mind stream, that itself is a virtuous action. As Lama Yeshe used to say, it's very difficult to say if something is simply purification or if it's accumulation of merit. It's in a sense, it's both. So one of the very special methods to purify negative karma is the recitation of the Vajrasattva mantra, or its variations, the Yamataka Vajrasattva or the Heruka Vajrasattva mantras, along with the visualization. You don't have to have an initiation, an empowerment of Vajrasattva to recite the mantra, nor do you need to have empowerment to do the visualization and so forth. If you receive the oral transmission of the mantra, it becomes more powerful to recite it. And so I thought this morning I would give the oral transmission of the Heruka Vajrasattva mantra, which is a variation of the Vajrasattva. Lama Yeshe used to suggest that was the most auspicious of the various Vajrasattva mantras of highest yoga tantra. Say, for instance, usually the Vajrasattva mantra itself is associated with the Kriya and lower tantras, whereas the Yamataka Vajrasattva mantra, the Heruka Vajrasattva mantra are associated with the highest yoga tantra. Although in Tara Chittamani, also there is the Vajrasattva mantra or the Padmasattva mantra that you probably run across. So I thought I would give this oral transmission. And although I don't have perfect Sanskrit pronunciation, the lamas who, lamas of Rinpoche, other lamas gave oral transmission of the mantras. Sometimes you wouldn't have recognized it as the Sanskrit mantra. So I think there's some power just in my reciting that for you. And I wanted you to pay attention to the two translations that are there below the mantra that I'm going to recite in a moment a couple of times. There's one from the FPMT, which is from the Vajraheruka mantra, and one from Jeffrey Hopkins, that's JH, from his book on the Kala Chakra Tantra, I think page 403 there. So there he is, it's the Vajrasattva, but you can imagine every place where it says Vajrasattva, you just can put Vajraheruka, if we're talking about the Vajraheruka mantra. And at the very last line, when it says, make me indivisible, you could say, make me Heruka, may I become Heruka. So we've said a motivation before, but just quickly. Sangye Chodang Soke Chognam La Changchu Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chushegi Pe Sognam Ki Drola Pencher Sangye Drubajo Sangye Chodang Soke Chognam La Changchu Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chushegi Pe Sognam Ki Drola Pencher Sangye Drubajo Sangye Chodang Soke Chognam La Jangchu Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chushegi Pe Sognam Ki Drola Penjer Sangye Dubajo, due to the merits of explaining the Dharma, in this case, giving the lung. So listen, imagine the mantra comes into your ears, to your heart, and entwining at the Vajrasattva mantra at your heart becomes stable after 3 recitations. Om Vajra Heruka Samayam Anupalaya Heruka Dveno Pashtita Drito Meboa Sutosho Meboa Suposho Meboa Anurakto Meboa Sawa Siddhim Meprayacha Savakama Suchame Chitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Vajra Heruka Mame Muncha Heruka Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahung Pe. That's one recitation. Om Vajra Heruka Samayam Anumpalaya Heruka Dveno Pashrita Drita Meboa Sudosha Meboa Suposha Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawa Siddha Mepra Yacha Sarva Karma Suchame Chitam Shriyam Kuruhung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Vajra Heruka Mame Mucha Heruka Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahun Pet. Third recitation, final recitation. Om Vajra Heruka Samayam Manobalaya Heruka Dhenopashida Drita Meboa Sudosha Meboa Suposha Meboa Anurata Meboa Sawasiddha Meprayacha Sarva Karma Suchame Chitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Vajra Heruka Mame Mucha Heruka Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahun Pet. So when you recite that, you don't necessarily have to know the meaning of the mantra, but it doesn't hurt. So when I recite the mantra, the first couple of times I recite, I try to think of the meaning, say using Jeffrey Hopkins' translation, which I think is more precise here. If you just replace the word Vajrasattva for Vajraheruka. So he says, where it says Om Vajraheruka Samaya Manopalaya. So Om Vajraheruka, please keep your pledge. Sorry, crank call on my telephone. So just to notice in the mantra itself, Om Vajraheruka Samaya. Sometimes the Tibetans say Manupalaya, but you can, because of the what would you say, Paul?
It's the Sandhi. Yeah, it's the Sandhi where it merges.
So Samayam is the which case is that?
Samayam would be the accusative.
So Anupalaya means please keep or follow your vow, your samaya. So that's where Jeffrey says, please keep your vow, or as the FPMT says, guard your pledge. Please keep your pledge. Vajraheruka, reside in me. The FPMT says, be present for me as Heruka, but Heruka, reside in me. Make me firm. When I'm thinking of that, sort of like the first sort of asking Vajraheruka to reside in you, then to make you resolute, firm, to make you satisfied in the sense of, not having desires and so forth that keep you from your Dharma tasks. Fulfill me, make me compassionate. That's the line, anurakto me bhava, make me compassionate. Grant me all siddhis, grant me all feats. That's the sarva siddham me parayacha. Grant me all siddhis. Also make my mind, or you could say, and make my mind auspicious in all actions. I'm not sure why they both say, I guess the FPNC said, in all actions make my intention better. But it's sarva karma sucha me chitam shriyam kuruhum, shriya kuruhum. Ha 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 ho are syllables that are related with the wisdoms of the Buddha. Bhagavan, ha ha ho, Vajraheruka, do not abandon me. Make me Heruka, great pledge being, Ahung Pet. So I just wanted to share that with you to sort of encourage you, if you're not doing it presently, a very, very powerful practice, and to encourage you to try to do that. Let me get it. Okay, got that out there. Okay, any questions about that before we begin? Okay. Okay. So now, how about our class itself? Any questions that are still residing from previous classes? Don, anything? You okay? What?
Yes, I'm okay, but it's not that I don't have lots of questions.
Okay, very clever. I don't usually say that if you don't have any questions, it means you haven't really thought about it. So you've thought about it. You have questions. Okay. So I will address a question of Mikhail's about that we talked about before about when the self-cherishing thought is eliminated. I'll address that a little bit later in the class. So first of all, where we're going to begin today is with the in Thupten Jinpa's translation, this statement, quoting, the statement that conventional truth is defined on the basis of such ignorant grasping. Which page is that? Does anyone have on the written text? Rachel, you have?
237.
237, and this is 241 in Jeffrey Hopkins' text.
Is that right? I might be wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe that's right. Okay, good. So we're going to start just the paragraph before that that we ended with last time. That says in Jinpa's translation, understood thus. So that's talking about the an explanation of the statement that the true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those who have ignorance. So what that was talking about. So understood thus, Chandrakirti's statement, quote, therefore, conventional truth is defined on the basis of afflicted ignorance, which is one of the factors connected with cyclic existence, quote, that's end quote. So that statement itself has two kind of significances. One is that when we talk about the context in which conventional truths are considered, we're talking about on the basis of afflicted ignorance. Is there a non-afflicted ignorance? Nadine, what do you think? Is there a non-afflicted ignorance?
I remember, yes, there is a non-afflicted ignorance, but I cannot explain it. I'm sorry.
Richard, have you been reading ahead? Do you remember what non-afflicted ignorance would be?
I'm afraid not. I'm sorry.
I think, I'm not sure if Stephen is, you know what non-afflicted ignorance is supposed to be, Stephen?
I'll take a stab at it, Venerable George. I associate it with the knowledge obscurations.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah.
So, Paul, do you have a finer, another take on that also?
If I remember correctly, non-afflicted ignorance is what you have on the higher bodhisattva grounds. That has to, it's the difference between being an arhat and a pratyeka Buddha, I believe. They have non-afflictive ignorance.
So in the Hinayana system, they talk about, they use that term, afflicted, non-afflicted ignorance, that the hearers and solitary realizers have eliminated all of the afflicted ignorance, but they haven't eliminated non-afflicted ignorance, which we would say from the Mahayana point of view would mean sort of the difference between the arhats and a Buddha. The Buddha has eliminated not only afflicted ignorance, but also non-afflicted ignorance, but it has a slightly different meaning in the Mahayana. It more or less refers to a certain segment of the obstructions to omniscience. Okay, so understood thus, Chandrakirti's statement that therefore conventional truth is defined on the basis of afflicted ignorance, just a regular ignorance, which is one of the factors connected with cyclic existence. It's the first of the 12 links, that ignorance. So it almost sounds like their conventional truth is defined on the basis of afflicted ignorance, or as Jeffrey Hopkins said, in this way, respectively, obscurational truths are posited through the force of the afflicted ignorance that is included within the links of dependent arising of cyclic existence. So by the force of that, so it doesn't mean that ignorance posits or defines conventional truth, because ignorance itself, whatever ignorance posits, is not true. So it doesn't, but conventional truths are true for an obscuring mind, right? So let's read a little bit further. So that statement indicates that the ignorance that grasps at phenomena is truly existent, known as grasping at the self-existence of persons and at the self-existence of phenomena, is understood to be the link of ignorance within the 12 links of dependent origination. It is thus not held to be an obstruction to knowledge. Does anyone hold that ignorance? Venerable, do you know? Does anyone hold that that ignorance to be obstruction to knowledge? Knowledge obstacle, a shadab? No one, Venerable?
Oh, I'm sorry. I usually go by Chutso.
Oh, 就是了.
No, I don't know.
Okay. So who knows? Mikhail, do you know?
For the Svatantrikas, the conception of true existence is it ignorance for them? I'm not sure.
For them, for some of the lower tenets, you can escape from cyclic existence by simply understanding the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. So the grasping at true existence is considered a knowledge obstacle for some of those lower tenets. Whereas for the Prasangika, it is not a knowledge obstacle, is not an obstruction to omniscience. It is just a klesha. Whereas the
Svatantrika would not call a conception of true existence as ignorance, or
say again?
the Svatantrikas would not call the conception of true existence ignorance.
Maybe not, but they would consider it to be a shadib rather than a nundib, right? They would consider it to be I'm not sure the correct pronunciation, jnana avarana, as opposed to a klesha avarana. Klesha avarana means obstruction due to klesha, or another sort of synonymous with obstructions to liberation. So that if you get rid of the klesha, the afflictions, the delusions, you can achieve nirvana. But in order to achieve enlightenment, you have to also get rid of something more subtle, what are called the shadib, or the, what's the correct pronunciation in Sanskrit, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, there's debate over whether you say jnana or gnana. I mean, some people like to say gnana. So you just run it together, gnana avar. See, now I can't do it.
Right.
Gnana
Okay.
varana. Yeah.
So, okay. So
and
now
klesha varana.
So now we get to the statement today. So the reading in Jinpa's text, the statement that conventional truth is defined on the basis of such ignorance, grasping at true existence, indicates how such conventional facts are characterized as true from the point of view of a specific perspective. It does not suggest that conventional reality like vases or cloths, he says bolts of cloth, and so on, are established by this ignorance. In other words, it doesn't, we would talk about like a piece of cloth and a vase and a pillar and so forth as conventional truths. They are not defined or posited by that ignorance. It does not suggest that conventional realities like vases, bolts of cloth, and so on are established by this ignorance grasping at true existence. Because what is posited by such grasping at true existence is something that Chandrakirti does not accept even on the conventional level. What does that mean? What does he not? Stephen, or you were disappearing?
Yeah, I
wasn't
just
sure.
had a power excursion for some reason.
Oh. Okay. I wasn't sure if you were. So what does that mean, that last statement? That Chandrakirti does not accept, I said, because what is posited by such grasping at true existence is something that Chandrakirti does not accept even on the conventional level. Chandrakirti does not accept that what's posited by grasping at true existence exists on the conventional level. So what's posited by grasping at true existence? It's truly existent, inherently existent phenomena, right? That's what it posits. That's what it sort of accepts and defines, so to speak. For the Svatantrika, certain Svatantrika and so forth, inherently existent phenomena do exist on the conventional level, right? I think we talked about this in the last class. Doris came to the rescue at that point, reminding that they are the ones that accept inherent existence on the conventional level, but Chandrakirti does not accept grasping at true existence or inherent existence on the conventional level. How are we doing? Making sense? This is more or less where we're just starting. Okay, so continuing in Jimpa's translation, since the, quote, conventional, or as Jeffrey says, he's using the word samvriti each time. Since the samvriti, the Sanskrit word samvriti, which the Tibetans translate variously as kunsop and other translations, since the conventional or samvriti in samvriti satya. Do you remember that combination, samvriti satya? Anna, do you know what satya means?
I forget, Venerable.
It means truth, right? Like for instance, parama artha satya means ultimate truth, and samvriti satya means conventional truth. That's how we usually translate it. Or you could translate it as truth for an obscuring mind, because the word samvriti has all of these various meanings. So the way Jimpa is translating, let's go through that first. Since the conventional samvriti in conventional truth, samvriti satya, which refers to the perspective from which things are posited as being true, and the conventional, again, samvriti, in the conception of a vase and so forth as conventionally existent, they are the same term. It's all samvriti. It appears that there have been many who have conflated these two senses of the term. It is therefore critical that we differentiate these different senses correctly. So Jeffrey Hopkins translates it this way. Therefore, it appears that because of the similarity of name between the samvriti, or obscuring consciousness, in the perspective of which so Jimpa said, since the conventional in conventional truth, so Jeffrey's taking it a slightly differently. It appears that because of the similarity between samvriti, meaning obscuring consciousness, in the perspective of which the truth that is part of samvriti satya, truth for an obscuring mind or obscurational truth, is posited, and the similarity with the samvriti or conventionality or conventional consciousness in the positing of pots and so forth as existing conventionally, many cases of mistaking these two, of these even to have the same meaning, have arisen. Therefore, these should be differentiated well. What do you think, Mikhail? Is it making sense?
Yeah, so he's saying that we should not conflate conventional truth and conventionally existent. So does that mean that an inherently existent pot is a conventional truth, but is not conventionally existent?
An inherently existent pot is a conventional truth, you think?
Yeah, but does not conventionally exist.
An inherently existent pot is a conventional truth. Is that right, Nadine? Okay.
No.
Why not?
Because Prasangikas say inherent existence does not even exist on a conventional level.
Yeah. An inherently existent pot. Mikhail, does an inherently existent pot exist?
No, sure, but I'm trying to
So it doesn't exist.
what's the difference between the two?
In a debate, the person who's debating with you gets to sort of direct the thing. So inherently existent pot doesn't exist. Do conventional truths exist?
Yeah, I would say yes, but here he's saying that yeah, they are.
I'm sorry for laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, defined.
So all existent phenomena, all phenomena, which is synonymous with existence, either have to be conventional truths or ultimate truths, right? So conventional truths are by definition existing. They are existent phenomena, right?
What is the difference here? He's saying we should not conflate. I don't get that, the
Okay.
difference.
First of all, the rest of you follow what we're saying here. Mikhail was hypothesizing that an inherently existent pot would be a conventional truth, but an inherently existent pot doesn't exist, whereas conventional truths do exist. So an inherently existent pot couldn't be a conventional truth. Okay, just for one thing. So let's see. Let's read what Jeffrey said again. Therefore, it appears that because of the similarity of name between the samvriti or kunsop in Tibetan, obscuring consciousness. Remember when we talked about conventional truth could be called truth for a jerk, as Jeffrey famously had little badges printed up in Bodh Gaya many years ago during some teaching. Truth for a jerk means truth for an obscuring mind. All of these phenomena are truths for an obscuring mind, for ignorance. They're not ultimately truth. They're not ultimately true, okay? So therefore, it appears that because of the similarity in name between samvriti, obscuring consciousness, that's the ignorance, truth for ignorance, in the perspective of which the truth that is part of samvriti satya, obscurational truth, or truth for a jerk, is posited. So it's talking about the word samvriti used in those two contexts. Samvriti, which is the obscuring consciousness, or kunsop, and the samvriti satya or kunsob dempa, obscurational truth or conventional truth. That's why Jimpa is calling it conventional both times. So there's a similarity between that and the samvriti, meaning conventionality or conventional consciousness. What's the difference between, say, let's use the second word, conventional consciousness in Jeffrey's translation. Conventional consciousness, what's the difference between that and obscuring consciousness, Paul?
The difference between an obscuring consciousness and a conventional consciousness.
Yeah, that's what Jeffrey's pointing out there. The first time, samvriti, meaning obscuring consciousness, or compare that with the samvriti, conventional or conventionality or conventional consciousness.
Right. So the obscuring consciousness, samvriti, in the context of samvriti satya, refers to ignorance.
Right.
Whereas the samvriti in the context of a conventional consciousness merely refers to a consciousness that is not observing emptiness, I would think.
But is it a valid consciousness? Is it ignorance?
Well, see, now we're getting into that question of conventional valid cognition, right? It is a valid consciousness that only when it is not engaged in ultimate analysis.
Well, when it posits conventionalities, right?
When it posits conventionalities, exactly.
And conventionalities can be posited validly. So there's a difference there. So maybe we'll leave that there for you to think about further. But there is a difference when we talk about conventional consciousness. Say like just let's say an I consciousness is conventional consciousness, or a reasoning consciousness that is delving into the conventional nature of something, not delving into its ultimate nature. It can posit the conventional nature of something, the conventional existence of something. So it says, therefore, it appears that because of the similarity of name between samvriti, in the perspective of which samvriti satya is posited, and the samvriti, the conventional consciousness, in the positing of pots and so forth as existing conventionally, many cases of mistaking these even to have the same meaning have arisen. Therefore, they should be differentiated well. So, yeah, a little bit, thought-provoking and a little bit difficult to understand, but I will leave that there. So then we'll continue in Thupten Jinpa's translation. There is now a question. Usually in Tibetan, one can understand that there's some kind of question, or sometimes it's just they're stated to be qualms or something like that. In the Tibetan, the phrase in question here ends with the words chena. If someone says, in other words, if someone asks, or if there's this kind of doubt. So, question: are these phenomena, like vases and so on, true from the perspective of the conventions of all beings who are not fully enlightened? Or are there some individuals from the perspective of whose conventions these are not true? Does that make sense? Or are there some individuals from the perspective of maybe it should be in the perspective of whom. Oh no, in the perspective of whose conventions, the conventions of whom these are not true. Jeffrey translates it this way. Then are these pots and so forth truths in the perspective of obscuring consciousness of all persons who have not become Buddhified? So he's translating the Tibetan that says what? Sangmagepa. So Sangye means Buddha, right? Sangmagepa means someone who has become Buddha. So Jeffrey says, are these pots and so forth truths in the perspective of the obscuring consciousness of all persons who have not become Buddhas? Pots, ordinary. So let's just talk about ordinary things. My mug, the trees, vases, bolts of cloth, pieces of cloth, whatever you want to say, pillars, cows. Are these things truths in the perspective of obscuring consciousness of all persons who have not become Buddhas? Or are there cases of these also not being truths in the perspective of some persons obscuring consciousnesses? So everyone who has not become Buddha, who has not become a Buddha, includes even the arhats and the bodhisattvas and the pure bhumis, right? So in Jimpa's translation, there's a reply, an answer. Phenomena like forms, sounds, and so on. You could say like pots and so forth, all of these different conventional things. Phenomena like forms, sounds, and so on, which are defined as conventional truths, says Chandrakirti. And then he's quoting from the Bhasham again, Chandrakirti's auto-commentary to his verses. These, in fact, possess the nature of being contrived for Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas who have abandoned the affliction of ignorance and perceive the conventional world to be like mirror images. These phenomena are not true for them because these beings have no pretensions of them being true. Okay, this is a very famous quotation. So here, when it's talking about Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas who've abandoned the affliction of ignorance, so afflicted ignorance, who are they? What kind are Shravakas on the path of seeing? Have they abandoned the affliction of ignorance? Stephen is saying no. Dot, are you saying yes? Don Isaacson, are you saying that they have abandoned? You're muted.
Yeah, no, I would say they have abandoned them up to the seventh ground, I guess.
They have say Shravakas on the Shravaka path. They are on the path of seeing. On their path of seeing, they've realized emptiness directly. They've abandoned some ignorance, right? Have they abandoned the affliction of ignorance?
I think the afflicted ignorance, but not the innate.
You're thinking the difference between the still afflicted ignorance. You're thinking the difference between intellectually formed or philosophically formed ignorance and innate. So they've abandoned the intellectually formed ignorance on the path of seeing and on the path of meditation. They abandon finer and finer forms of the innate ignorance, but they have not the Shravakas, until they become arhats, they have not abandoned the affliction of ignorance completely, right? And the bodhisattvas on the impure grounds, from the first bhumi, first ground to the seventh ground, they've abandoned certain varieties of the ignorance, the affliction of ignorance, or the klesha of ignorance. I think he's mentioning it there because we're using also the terminology of non-afflicted ignorance in some other context. So the affliction of ignorance, they've abandoned subtler and subtler versions up till the end of the seventh ground, but it's not until the eighth ground that they have abandoned it completely. So that means pure level bodhisattvas and Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats. These, in fact, possess the nature of being contrived for Shravaka, Pratika Buddhas, and bodhisattvas who have abandoned the affliction of ignorance and perceive the conditioned world to be like mirror images. So for those three, the terminology is being used here quite often, the three beings. There's not three beings, there could be trillions of beings. What it means is three categories: Shravaka Arhats, hearer Arhats, Pratika Buddha Arhats, and the bodhisattvas on the pure grounds. They have eliminated all ignorance, and for them, these conventionalities, do not appear to be true. They appear to be contrived or artificial, made up. They know that they're not true. These phenomena are not true for them because these beings have no pretensions of them being true. So, or as Jeffrey Hopkins translates that, moreover, for hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas who have abandoned afflicted ignorance, that means these three categories of beings, and who see compositional phenomena as like reflections and so forth, those forms, sounds, and so forth, which are posited as obscurational truths, have a fabricated nature and are not truths because they have no conceit of true existence. And in his note to the meaning of they have no conceit, he's just mentioning in Jeffrey Hopkins' book, he's just mentioning how this is not the exact quotation from Chandrakirti's Bhasham, but Lama Tsongkhapa's rephrasing of it. And Jeffrey's giving his own take on whether that's because some scholars say that it was writing from memory, but Jeffries tends to think he was trying to make it more clear, rephrasing it in a way that made it more clear. What's that called when you do that?
Paraphrasing?
Maybe, yeah, kind of like paraphrasing, yeah. Try to improve the meaning. So does that make sense so far? There are these three beings. For them, these three categories of beings, for them, it's more clear in Jeffrey's translation, these forms and so forth, which are posited as obscurational truths. They're posited as conventional truths. They have a fabricated nature. How did Jim translate that? What did he say? Contrived? Being contrived. Jeffrey translates it as they have a fabricated nature and are not truths because they have no conceit of true existence. That means that's one of the synonyms of a strong grasping at true existence. They have no longer grasping at true existence. So in Jeffrey's translation, it seems clear that they're open to being obscurational truths, conventional truths for them, but they are not truths. Now, let's say someone before that, on the the pure ground, on the impure grounds, let's say bodhisattvas on the impure grounds. Nadine, what do you think? Do they ever look at these things, the conventional truths, as being truths?
Yeah, probably yes, because otherwise it would not make sense to make this distinction between them and the three persons.
Right. Well, when would that occur? Those individuals on the impure grounds, they still have some grasping to true existence left. They haven't abandoned all of it. So when those those particular levels of grasping to true existence arise in post-meditation, they don't arise all the time, but when they do arise, for their minds, that would be true. Those things would be true at that time, even on some subtle kind of truth to the conventional things, that there be true. Remember what we're talking about here: true and false. Something is true philosophically from the Prajnanika point of view if its mode of existence accords with its mode of appearance. How it actually is and how it appears, they are in accordance. That's something that's true. So for them, those bodhisattvas, or for those non-arhat hearers and solitary realizers that are on the path, they still have some, if they still have some grasping to true existence, when it occurs, for them, there would be, they would perceive those things as true, but it doesn't mean they perceive them as true all the time, right? Making sense? Mikhail, does it make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. No, I'm just checking. Okay. So Jimba's translation of the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on that statement in the Bhasham, in Chandrakirti's Bhasham. So it says, as to the meaning of this statement, there are three kinds of persons for whom such phenomena are not true. It means not true ever, because even bodhisattvas and Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, sometime on the, once they've passed the path of seeing, there are moments, even in post-meditation, when they are not true. But this is talking about all the time. What are those three kinds of persons? Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Here too, it is not just any Shravaka or any Pratika Buddha or Bodhisattva, it is those with specific characteristics. One such feature or characteristic is that they a direct realization that all conditioned things are just like reflections, in that although devoid of intrinsic existence, they appear as such. One such feature is that the direct realization that all conditioned things, what does that mean, conditioned things? Richard, waiting. You're muting.
Phenomena,
Come again?
phenomena,
Conditioned things?
yeah,
So phenomena includes permanent phenomena also, right?
all right. Impermanent phenomena.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I wonder why why here that's maybe you check why it's not saying all phenomena, it's saying all conditioned things or all compositional things. How does Jeffrey translate that? Furthermore, because who see compositional phenomena as like reflections and so forth. Compositional phenomena. Jimpa translates that as conditioned things. So compositional phenomena, conditioned things as like reflections and so forth. In that They are devoid of intrinsic existence. They appear to be intrinsically existent. To exclude bodhisattvas below the seventh ground, or to exclude bodhisattvas on the seventh ground and below, I think should say, and Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas on the learner's stage. The learner's stage means they're not yet no more learners. They're not yet arhats, right? To exclude those who also have this realization that phenomena are empty of inherent existence. The three individuals are also described in the commentary as having, quote, eliminated the affliction of ignorance. Thus, we must understand these three persons to include bodhisattvas on the purified grounds, the pure grounds, 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds, and Shravaka and Pratika Buddha arhats. It is from the perspective of these three categories of beings that phenomena remain untrue. Or as Jeffrey translates that last section there, let's see. Long sentences, it's hard to see where the beginning of one sentence is. Since even bodhisattvas on the seventh ground and below, as well as hearers and solitary realizers, who are learner superiors, that is, who have reached the path of seeing but have not yet the path of no more learning, they have merely this direct realization. In order to eliminate them, Chandrakirti says of the three persons that they have abandoned ignorance. Hence, the three persons are to be taken as bodhisattvas on the pure grounds, that is the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds, and the two types of foe destroyer, arhats, hearers, and solitary realizers. These pots and so forth are not truths in the perspective of those three. Making sense? Okay. Thank you. Mikhail, what do you think?
Yeah, just you added a word which I find so enlightening. So you say the kinds of person for whom such phenomena are always not true. This is so very important because
That's what I'm thinking is implied there, because there certainly are moments in the continuum of the bodhisattvas, let's say on the impure grounds, when these afflictions are not manifest, whatever small grasping to true existence is still there, that it's not manifest. That's my take on that. So you can take that with a grain of George salt. Okay, let's continue. So then Jimpa's translation continues. That which is untrue includes, as the phrase, these in fact, quote unquote, suggests, outer and inner phenomena. Jeffrey's translation doesn't take that in that same way. Let's see. The reason why these are not truths in the perspective is that they have no conceit of true existence. The pots and so forth are not truths in the perspective of those three. So in Jeffrey's translation, he begins immediately after that statement that they are not truths in the perspective of those three. His translation says the reason why these are not truths in their perspective is that they have no conceit of true existence. And then he goes on to explain that. Jimpa has this extra phrase, that which is untrue includes, as the phrase, these in fact suggest, outer and inner phenomena. That's in Thupten Jimpa's Tibetan text. Maybe the text that
I think it's in the next sentence in Hopkins, Venerable George. I think he rearranged the sentences.
Okay. The reason why these are not truths in their perspective is that they have no conceit of true existence. That is, they do not have the conception of true existence. This is because they have extinguished the ignorance apprehending true existence. Hence, it is proven that external and internal phenomena are not established as truths in the perspective of obscuring consciousnesses of those three types of beings. But he doesn't have what Jimpa has put in, quote, the phrase, these in fact. Anyway, it's very, very small part. Let's try to unpack what this is talking about. Jimpa translates, that which is untrue includes, as the phrase these in fact suggest, outer and inner phenomena. So that means outer and inner phenomena are seen by these three categories of being as untrue, as not truth, not truths. The reason that they are untrue for these beings is because these beings have no inclination for apprehending true existence, given that ignorance grasping at true existence has ceased for them. Jeffrey breaks it down in more granularly there. The reason why these are not truths in their perspective, these three categories of being, is that they have no conceit of true existence. And that is the Tibetan, you see at the bottom of the page there, Dempar Lompa. So Lompa, I'm not sure. Mikhail, do you know what Lompa means? Have you studied?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it last Monday, I think it's, or
Yeah.
it's about being really sure and proud of your assertion.
Yeah, or so confident, or Paul,
Confident.
how do you take Lompa?
Yeah, usually it's something like being conceited about something or proud of something, or yeah. I think that's why Jeffrey translated it as the conceit.
Right. I don't see that exactly where that is.
I think
it says they have no conceit of true existence, Dempar Lompa. That is to say, they do not have the conception of true existence. That means that they don't have the Dempar Shempa. That means they don't have any conception that phenomena are truly existent. And that in turn is because they have extinguished ignorance apprehending true existence. Okay. So therefore, these passages from the commentary from Jimpa's translation establish how outer and inner phenomena remain untrue from the perspective of the convention, samvriti, of these three persons. Did I skip something? Yeah. The reason they are untrue for these beings is because these beings have no inclination for apprehending true existence, given that ignorance grasping at true existence has ceased for them. I think Jeffrey's translation has more granularity there. So Jimpa's translation continues. Therefore, these passages from the commentary, he has in quotes, in brackets, these passages establish how outer and inner phenomena remain untrue from the perspective of the convention, samvriti, of these three kinds of persons. Or as Jeffrey says, hence it is proven that external and internal phenomena are not established as truths in the perspective of obscuring consciousness of these three types of persons, because they do not have such ignorance. I think that's more correct. Jimpa is saying, therefore, these passages establish how outer and inner phenomena remain untrue from the perspective of the convention of these three kinds of persons. Maybe you could take Jimpa's translation as meaning the same thing, but Jeffrey is saying, hence it is proven that external and internal phenomena are not established as truths in the perspective of obscuring consciousnesses of those three types of beings. And then he has illuminating bracket because they do not have such ignorance. That's the point. They're not, that proves that the outer and inner phenomena are untrue for them because they don't have the ignorance that would, that would cause them to be understood as true, truth for a jerk and so forth. How are we doing? Making sense? Following? Louise, how are you doing? Yeah.
Trying to follow.
Trying to follow. Okay. Doris has indicated that she's following with a thumbs up emoji there. Okay. So then in Jimpa's translation, so since the commentary in no way establishes these phenomena to be not conventional truths for these beings. Oh, I think in our Monday class, we were talking about these double negatives here. So since the commentary in no way establishes these phenomena to be not conventional truths, can I say not to be conventional truths for these beings, other than demonstrating them to be untrue for them, those who read these passages as demonstrating these phenomena are not conventional truths for the three persons, expose a great crudeness in their intellectual engagement. Okay. This is therefore an inferior standpoint whereby the intention of the Master Chandrakirti is soiled by the stains of their own feeble intellect, or as Jeffrey translates this, through commenting in that way, Chandrakirti has not at all proven that external and internal phenomena are not obscurational truths in their perspective. He hasn't proven that they are not obscurational truths in their perspective. But has proven that these are not truths in their perspective. So can you see the difference there? They are not true to the perspective of these three categories of beings, but he has not proven that they're not obscurational truths in their perspective. They still know that they're obscurational truths. Those who, despite this, hold that Chandrakirti's commentary has proven that these are not obscurational truths have a bad mode of explanation, having contaminated the master's thoughts through the defilements of their own minds due to the very great coarseness of the operation of their mind. So more or less the same as what Chimpa's sort of Lama Tsokapa. It doesn't say in any of the notes or commentary that I've seen what commentators Lama Tsokapa was referring to there. Paul, do you know? Have you heard?
Not off the top of my head, but there's the usual suspects.
Okay, so let's continue. How are we doing? We're just going to just read this next session. We'll take a short break. It is that from Trimpa's translation, it is not that these phenomena are being demonstrated as untrue to the three kinds of persons for their benefit. It is not the case that these phenomena, outer and inner phenomena, are being demonstrated as untrue for the three kinds of persons, to the three kinds of persons, for their benefit. Almost it's hard to understand why that would come up as a thought. It is for the people like ourselves that these phenomena are demonstrated to be untrue from the perspective of those three kinds of persons. As for beings who are other than the three classes and below them, they all possess innate grasping at true existence, and so nothing can be demonstrated to be devoid of true existence from the perspective of their conventions. So that's a point I would debate with. Remember, I was saying before, there are instances in the continua of those beings that are below the pure bhumis and that are here in Shravaka and Pratika Buddha trainees that have realized emptiness. There are instances in their mind when that grasping is not manifest, but maybe there's some point here that Lama Tsongkhapa is making. As for the beings who are other than the three classes and below them, they all possess innate grasping at true existence. They all possess it, but it is not necessarily manifest, right? Nadine, are you favoring your cold or you have a doubt?
Oh, thank you, Venerable George. I just remembered a sentence which we heard before. The true nature, that is the mode of being of all phenomena, never appears to those ridden with ignorance.
Yeah.
It sounds very similar to what we hear now.
Yeah. So what did that mean? Do you remember? For those who had ignorance.
All ordinary beings cannot perceive reality.
It doesn't, remember, it said it didn't appear what I was proposing in all ways, because they do, ordinary beings who have not realized emptiness directly, they can still have realized emptiness, right? Conceptually. And on the path of preparation and the moments before achieving the path of seeing, they have a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight, realizing emptiness. So emptiness does appear to them, but it is not the appearing object. So there's some kind of subtle argument going on there. Anna, you want to remind me to take a break? Okay, let's take a little break. Grab yourself a cup of tea, run off to the bathroom if necessary. We'll leave I'll turn off my own video, but I'll keep my audio on in case anyone has questions, or I'd like to listen to your debates. Anna, there we go. Good to see you again after a short break. So how is that settling with you? Making sense? Tough, as Geshe Sopa used to say, chewing these dry bones. Okay. So let's continue on. In Jimpa's text, now, if the meaning is not as explained above, and the meaning is that it is the case that these phenomena are being shown to be not conventional truths for these three classes of individuals. So throwing out what we just explained to be the case, assuming that they are not conventional truths for these individuals, then the rationale presented would become totally irrelevant. And at that point, there is a note, 436, I think, is that it? So Khapa is saying that, this is Thupten Jinpa's note. So Khapa is saying that to recognize something as a conventional truth entails understanding it to be false. Not true. And so to say that phenomena such as vases are not conventional truths for the three classes of Aryas, because these beings lack grasping at true existence, is to make a totally irrelevant argument. In fact, it is the contrary. It is precisely because these beings are free from grasping at true existence that for them phenomena are ultimately false and our mere conventional truths. Is that right? Did you read that note, Paul? Are you seeing that? 436. So Khapa is saying that to recognize something as a conventional truth entails understanding it to be false. Is that true? Why, Stephen?
Well, because it's only true for a concealing consciousness, which you don't have if you're on these pure grounds or an arhat.
A little bit different. Tsongkhapa is saying that to recognize something as a conventional truth, do ordinary beings recognize my mug as a conventional truth? Okay, good. We have different opinions. Paul says no, and Stephen says yes. What did you say, Nadine? I didn't see your head wagging when we were there. No, they're not. Why not? Nadine.
Because only if one has realized emptiness, one can realize phenomena to be conventional truths.
Right. You can recognize conventional truths. Like, say, for instance, the example I've given many times, you could recognize what was his name? Clinton. What was the president's first name? I forgot. Anyway, President Clinton, the man. You could recognize him in a crowd. You know, someone say, "Who? You know, did you see that guy?" "Oh yeah, I saw that guy." But you didn't necessarily recognize him as Clinton. No, he's blocking on his first name. What was his first name?
Bill.
Bill Clinton. You could recognize him, but not necessarily as Bill Clinton. So you can recognize conventional truths, but not necessarily as conventional truths. Do you see the distinction, Stephen? Yeah, you knew that anyway, right? Yeah. Louise, making sense? Yeah. Okay. So Tsongkhapa is saying that to recognize something as a conventional truth entails understanding it to be false, not true, and to say that phenomena such as vases are not conventional truths for the three classes of beings because these beings lack grasping at true existence is to make a totally irrelevant argument. In fact, it's the contrary. It is precisely because these beings are free from grasping at true existence that for them phenomena are ultimately false and are mere conventional truths. So that goes back, that was, what was that? That was 436. So Jeffrey's translation of that, if in contrast to the above explanation, if it were that Chandrakirti were proving that external and internal phenomena are not obscurational truths in the perspective of those three types of persons, the reason he stated, quote, because they have no conceit of true existence, would be an extremely unrelated proof. So I didn't put down here, oh, I did, what the Tibetan is here when he said, Jeffrey translated as unrelated, Jimpa translated as what? Irrelevant truth, right?
It was Shindu Madralwa. I think, George.
Shintu Midrawa, right? Where is that? Shintu Madralwa, yeah, right. It would be extremely unrelated, literally. How does Jeffrey say it? Because
Totally irrelevant, yeah.
Irrelevant, yeah. Because they have no conceit, would be an extremely unrelated proof. Jeffrey translates it literally, unrelated proof. Because of the base, because for a base that is an object to be established as an obscurational truth in the perspective of certain awareness, for some object to be established as a conventional truth in the perspective of a certain awareness, that base must be established as a falsity, just as Nadine was saying. You have to know that it's false. And most people don't know that they're false. They think these things are existing the way that they appear. And hence stating as the reason why external and internal phenomena are not obscurational truths in the perspective of those three types of persons, that they do not have apprehension of true existence, would be a source of laughter. And his note there says that these beings do not have consciousnesses apprehending inherent existence. This is parallel comment to Jimpa's comments about that. That these beings do not have consciousnesses apprehending inherent existence, right? They've abandoned it completely, indicates that they understand that external and internal phenomena are obscurational truths. Objects that seem to exist the way that they appear only for ignorant consciousnesses. They can understand this because they no longer have such ignorance. Thus, it would be ridiculous to indicate that these persons who understand that forms and so forth are falsities do not understand that these are obscurational truths. Good. And what does he say? In order to establish for a certain awareness that a base, that is an object, is an obscurational truth, that object must be established for that awareness as a falsity. The reason for this is by way of the essential that if it is seen that when positing the truth that is part of the term obscurational truth with respect to pots and so forth, it must be posited from between an awareness and fact. It must be posited from between an awareness and fact as a truth in the perspective of just an obscuring consciousness that apprehends true existence, and is not posited as a truth in fact. It must be seen that it is a distinction of being in the perspective of an obscuring consciousness. It is not applied, it is not established as truth, and is a falsity. I've jumped ahead in Jeffrey's. Let's read what Chimpa has translated there. Okay, the reason why a fact, an object needs to be established as false, to be established as a conventional truth by an instance of cognition is this. This is Jimpa's translation. When the meaning of truth is understood in the context of conventional truth. For example, vases or vases and so forth, we need to bear in mind two senses of the term truth. One from the perspective of the subject, which is what Jeffrey translated as between an awareness and fact. That means the subjective aspect and the objective aspect. For example, vases and so forth, we need to bear in mind two senses of the term truth. One from the perspective of the subject, awareness, and the other in the objective sense. When one sees that their truth is not posited in the objective sense, excuse me, but posited as true merely from the perspective of grasping at true existence. So in other words, you know that the object doesn't exist, but your awareness is still grasping at it. A concealer, samvriti, one comes to recognize that without such qualification, such phenomena do not possess true existence and are instead seen to be false. This is the critical point to understand. How are we doing? Making sense? Richard, what do you think? Kind of a little bit tough section?
It's very tough. but I think I understand it.
Yeah, I think I understand it too, but not completely sure. So I have to go back and think about it a bit. Okay, so let's leave that for the time being. Now we begin a new section that's in addition by Lama Tsongkhapa. It's much of Gompa Rapsel is following Chandrakirti's auto commentary. It's a commentary to the auto commentary, right? But there are several sections, like when we talked about how hearers and solitary realizers realize emptiness, and throughout the text, there are many sections that Lama Tsongkhapa elaborates, brings up some extra points. So this is one of those sections. So this, Jimper translates this as a unique presentation of the afflictions, or in Jeffrey's translation on page 243 at the bottom, explanation of the Prasangika unique presentation of afflictive emotions, the consequence school. Prasangika means, prasanga means a consequence, right? Like when a logical argument. So the consequence school or Prasangika school, unique presentation of the klesha, the afflictive. Jeffrey has emotions. I'm not sure why he wants to put emotions there. The afflictions. Jibba says unique presentation to the afflictions. So this is from the point of view of the Prasangika school. So you don't find this very often in the low rig texts. When we had explanation of the afflictions, they were mainly from which school, what tenet school? Do you remember? Do you remember, Rachel? From
Sorry, it's a lower school, but I can't remember which one right now.
maybe from Sautrantika, some from the Chittamatra, but certainly not from the Prasangika. Some of the Western textbooks that have translated, like Jeffrey Geshe Repton's text that Steve Batchelor translated, had some explanation of Prasangika and some other texts. But here, this is, I think, again, Losang Gyatso, who was the abbot of the dialectic school, when his text on Lorig, for those of you who have access to such things, it hasn't been translated into English, but he had a whole section on the Prasangika, presentation of the afflictions, maybe based on this and other things. So here we're going to be talking about Lama Tsongkhapa's this sort of excursion, going off the main track of what Chandrakirti was talking about, just to talk about the presentation of the klesha. So Lama Tsongkhapa said in Jimpa's translation, I feel it is crucial to recognize that this tradition, this Prasangika tradition, has an identification of the afflictions, the klesha, that is distinct, that is different from the upper and lower Abhidharma systems. So, Karen, do you remember what does that mean? The upper and lower Abhidharmas. What does that mean?
Well, I remember it's the two brothers, and one was from the Prasangika view, and the other was from one of the lower school views.
Right, pretty close. Yeah, one was not Prasangika. One was holding the Hinayana view, Vasubandhu. So he wrote, and later when he criticized the Mahayana to his brother, even to Asanga, who was his older brother, so as an act of contrition for having criticized the Mahayana, he wrote the Abhidharma Kosha, supposedly, which is explanation of the Vaibhashika school from the point of view of the Sautrantika school, right? So that's called the lower Abhidharma. So it encompasses kind of the understandings of the the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika schools. The upper Abhidharma was a text, the Abhidharma, what is it called, Paul?
Abhidharma Samuchaya.
Samuchaya, which a Sangha composed, which is mainly from the Chittamatra point of view. So it's not, it itself is not going to be Prasangika view. It's not even talking about Madhyamaka point of view in general, although a Sangha was recognized by all of the great pundits afterwards, is actually his final view was Madhyamaka, was even among Madhyamaka, was Prasangika. He did have the correct view of reality. He was writing these various texts as ladders to help people get to the correct view. Okay, so that's what's meant by the upper and lower Abhidharmas. The upper Abhidharma means the Mahayana Abhidharma that was written by a Sangha, and the lower Abhidharma is the Abhidharma Kosha that was written by Vasubandhu. So Jimba's translation continues. In general, grasping at the true existence of things is twofold. Grasping at true existence of persons and grasping at true existence of phenomena. That's nothing new, right? We know that. Generally, we say there are two kinds of grasping. It was already mentioned above that Chandrakirti also considers these two to be the two types of grasping at self-existence. In general, grasping at the true existence of things is twofold. Grasping at the true existence of persons and grasping at the true existence of phenomena. It was already mentioned above that Chandrakirti considers this to be the two types of grasping at self-existence. Sounds redundant, right? What does Jeffrey say? The system of the consequent school has a unique identification of the afflictive emotions that does not accord with the upper and lower manifest knowledges. That's how he translates Abhidharmas. Abhidharma. In the Abhidharma Kosha, it actually defines Abhidharma as pristine knowledge. So he's translating as manifest knowledges. And since understanding it appears to be very important, the difference between the Prasangika and the lower, let's explain it. Let us explain it. Consciousnesses apprehending that things truly exist are of two types. Those apprehending persons to truly exist and those apprehending other phenomena to truly exist. It has already been explained that just these are considered to be the two apprehensions of a self. That seems to be a little more clear, I think. Doesn't sound so redundant there. Jimba's translation continues. Chandrakirti describes such grasping at true existence as afflicted ignorance. That's how we've been referring to it, right? Afflicted ignorance. And left up till now, unafflicted ignorance, not completely clear as it's defined, but seems to be associated with the obstructions to omniscience. Chandrakirti describes such grasping at true existence as afflicted ignorance, both in his commentary on entering the middle way, the Madhyamaka Vatara, the Bhasham that we're commenting on, and in his commentary on the 400 stanzas. So you remember Chandrakirti wrote several commentaries, famous ones on, the Madhyamaka Vatara and also the Prasanapada, clearly worded. Were both commentaries on Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom. He also wrote commentaries to Aryadeva's 400 stanzas of the yogic activities of bodhisattvas. So that was a very important commentary. So in that, he also states that this grasping at true existence is afflicted ignorance. He states furthermore, Chandrakirti states furthermore, that such ignorance has been eliminated by Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats. which is what that section at the beginning of Majjhimavatara, Chandrakirti was explaining how hearers and solitary realizers must realize emptiness also. He states furthermore that such ignorance has been eliminated by Shravaka and Pratika Buddhas. They've eliminated the grasping to the true existence of phenomena. And in his commentary on the 400 stanzas, he states that bodhisattvas that have obtained forbearance toward the unborn nature have also eliminated such ignorance. Bodhisattvas that have obtained forbearance toward the unborn nature. So remember when we were talking about patience, which is sometimes translated as forbearance, usually it means putting up with, suffering and not retaliating and so forth. But a certain kind of patience or forbearance to the Dharma that is profound, not to be overcome with grief and, laziness in the face of things that are difficult to understand. So here, this note, 438, so we're talking about bodhisattvas who have obtained forbearance toward the unborn nature. So 438 says, he's quoting the 400 the 400 stanzas in Bodhisattva activity by Aryadeva. Here, bodhisattvas attaining, quote, forbearance toward the unborn nature refers to those on the 8th ground and above. And he also refers to another note, which I'm not going to check on right now. In Jeffrey's translation, he at this section, he says, Chandrakirti's commentary on Aryadeva's 400 explains that bodhisattvas who have attained forbearance with respect to the doctrine of no production, and then he has as a sort of an explanation of this in brackets, this being at the beginning of the 8th bodhisattva ground, that they have abandoned it also, grasping the true existence. Therefore, this afflicted ignorance is the force opposing the knowledge of suchness. In other words, selflessness, no self. This afflicted ignorance is the force opposing the knowledge of suchness. So this afflicted ignorance, that's the main ignorance, that is the root of samsara in some presentations, is not merely not knowing something. We mentioned this when we talked in Lorig a couple of years ago. It's an actual, so it's a kind of a misdirected wisdom. This ignorance is a misdirected wisdom that believes phenomena to be truly existent. It's grasping at them to be truly existent. It's not merely a lack of knowledge like the word ignorance might sound like. In Tibetan, marikpa almost sounds like not knowing. In Tibetan, avidya, the letter A prefix is a negation, but here the negation is in a sense of it being the opposite of vidya, not just the lack of vidya, not just the lack of knowledge, the opposite of knowledge. Therefore, this afflicted ignorance is a force opposing the knowledge of suchness, namely no self. The opposite of such knowledge is, in turn, should not be understood as a mere absence of knowledge or some such. It should be understood as a direct opposite of knowledge, for it reifies the person, superimposes, exaggerates the person and phenomena to be intrinsically existent. Understood in this way, understood thus, the reification of self-existence of phenomena is considered afflicted ignorance. So that ignorance, misdirected, you could say it's a misdirected wisdom. Understood thus, the reification of self-existence of phenomena, that means that ignorance believing in that, sort of projecting that in one's consciousness, is considered afflicted ignorance, and the twin grasping at the intrinsic existence of I, inherent existence of I and mine, constitute the view of the transitory collection, or as Jempa likes to translate, the identity view. So in this respect, and how the view of the transitory collection or the identity view is defined, this Chandrakirti tradition diverges from the Abhidharma. That's where we're going to stop today. So if you can read ahead next time. So Jeffrey Hopkins' translation, let's see. Oh, I have it right here. So this last section, Jeffrey translates, taken that way, the consequence schools positing, or the Prasangikas positing, that a consciousness superimposing a self of phenomena. So it's not just the lack of knowing about whether a self of phenomena exists. It's actually superimposing a self of phenomena. That is an afflicted ignorance. And it's positing that the two apprehensions, that I and mine, are established by way of their own character, intrinsically existent, inherently existent, are the views of the transitory collection, do not accord with the proponents of manifest knowledge, do not accord with the upper and lower Abhidharmas. That's pretty clear, right? Or no? What do you think? Paul, clear? Yeah. Venerable Chutso. Clear?
Yeah, I think so far, as we go on to see what Vasubandhu had to say.
Yeah.
And contrast it, that will help.
Yeah. So just as a prelude to that, you may remember that in the there's some really interesting things coming up soon. So in the lower Abhidharmas, or let's say in the lower tenets, when we talk about the view of the transitory collection, that's one way of translating it, or as Jimpa translates it, identity view. I keep on forgetting the Sanskrit, Paul. What's the Sanskrit of the?
I don't remember the sense. It's Jiksok Dawa in Tibetan, so that would be
That's
something drishti.
That's
Satkaya.
Satkaya drishti, thank you.
Yeah. So some people translate it completely differently. Sat meaning true. Maybe that's why Jimba gets identity. Kaya meaning collection or something else. Dristi means view, but that Satkaya Dristi is what in the Tibetan tradition seems to be translatable into English as a view of the transitory collection. So from the lower tenets, the view of the transitory collection is something that observes the aggregates, which themselves are impermanent, and conceives them to be a self-supporting, substantially existent person. Completely different than the Prasangika view. Prasangika view doesn't view the aggregates as its referent, what it's referring to. Actually, it's referring to the conventionally existent person will be coming up. It's observing the conventionally existent person and conceiving it to be inherently existent. Now you might say, how could it conceive the conventionally existent person? Well, we observe conventionally existent things, right? And we perceive them we conceive them to be inherently existent, like that. It's observing the conventionally existent person, which itself is imputed upon the aggregate, and conceiving that conventionally existent person to be inherently existent. So that's quite exciting. I think after this sort of, I see all of you sort of like, when is this going to end? This is ending now, and we're getting into some more tasty sections. So before we end, anyone have any questions or observations? Nadine? No? No? Karen? David is probably, is he there? David, do you have any questions?
Yes and no.
Yes or no? Okay. How about yes?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know.
You have to articulate them.
Yeah.
Diana, how about you? Do you have anything? You sort of jumped in after a couple of weeks in sunny Napoli.
I am afraid that this will open a huge kettle of fish.
Oh, then please don't.
Save it for discussion on Monday if you.
Could I put a marker down on, I'd like to know exactly what we mean by a person.
Okay. So the definition of a person is kind of a little bit sort of like tricky. So we say a person is a being, actually a being, Kebu Purusha is a synonym of person. But anyway, a person is a being imputed upon appropriate number of the 5 aggregates. In short, a person is something that is imputed upon the 5 aggregates.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be just one aggregate, the consciousness aggregate. For instance, in the formless realm, there are no form aggregates. So it would be on the 4 conscious aggregates. And other realms, it would be someone imputed upon the form aggregate, your body, your feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and primary consciousnesses. And so therefore, a person is not form nor consciousness. A person is a non-associated compositional factor. We were talking about recently, because it is impermanent. Person is impermanent, but it is not form and not consciousness. You might say, well, it is form. It's imputed upon the form, but it's not form itself. It's also imputed on the consciousness. It's imputed generally upon a combination of the two.
Okay.
That's what person is. Okay. So thanks for your patience. We've been chewing in the last several weeks. This has been quite a, tough kind of section. I see a lot of you holding your heads sometime. I think Richard has disappeared, right? Is Richard still there? Richard sort of also sort of.
He posted a message saying he had to leave. He apologized.
Yeah. So I think all of us found that a little bit difficult. Now this next section will be a little more, in a sense, uplifting, because it might eliminate a lot of questions that we've had, as opposed to the earlier section, which was eliminating, trying to clarify questions that we never had, we never thought that we had, right? Now these are questions that we do have. So if Anna, are you the host? I forgot. Yeah, if you'd like to put up the prayers. So remembering at the beginning, we try to set a motivation. And in the future, as we try to set that motivation more and more powerfully, due to these virtues that I've created today, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that very state. said Dei Sala. It doesn't say enlightened, say Dei Sala, to that very level, to that very state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen in my mind and in the minds of others arise and grow as a result of these virtues. And as a result of these virtues, may that which has arisen already in mine and other beings' mind streams not diminish, may it not degenerate, but increase more and more. And then the prayer for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, quick recognition of his reincarnation. Peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, so they are not children of the victorious ones, they're a separate category. The conqueror Losang Drakpa, that means Lama Tsong Khapa, recognized here sort of poetically as already recognized as a Buddha, victorious or conqueror Losang Drakpa. The spiritual father of his two sons, Gyaltsabche and Kedrupche, together with your Gelupa lineage and so forth, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that was never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively both for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and for mother living beings, mother migrators, you suddenly departed to peace. You passed away. At this, I was bereft. I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the undeceiving truth of the great waves of bodhicitta, of the bodhisattvas, may the smile of the new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. Finally, for all of our gurus, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends. I make this request, and the implication being, please live long and stable lives. So thank you very much for your patience. Those of you who have time on Monday, we'll have discussion group. And Mintu, come on to the discussion group on Monday. Show yourself before we leave. So I look forward to seeing you then. If not next Monday, next Saturday. Hi, Mintu. We'll continue. Read ahead and let's have some good discussions then. Take care.